right, I'm Assemblyman Bill Colton. I represent the 47th Assembly District, which basically is the neighborhoods of Bensonhurst, Gravesend, Bath Beach, and a little bit of Dyker Heights. And I've found that the job of Assemblyman has two very distinct parts. One part is when I'm in the district, where we have a community office that sees 4,000 or 5,000 people every year. And it has multiple languages among the staff. So we have staff members who speak Russian, Ukrainian, Georgian. We have staff members who speak Spanish. We have staff members who speak Chinese. We have staff members who speak Bengali. And our constituents in this neighborhood speak many different languages, and we need to be able to serve them all. So that's one part of the job of an assembly member. The 4,000 or 5,000 people a year who come in have many different problems. It might be a problem such as with seniors, senior housing they need. A lot of people are looking to see if there's any senior housing open. It might be a problem dealing with the MTA, the reduced fare card. We have people coming to get information about the reduced fare card and how do they get it and to apply for it. Food stamps is another big area where people come in to apply for food stamps. There's usually immigration problems that will come in to the office. Usually there are problems with landlord-tenant, disputes between landlord and tenant. Mostly tenants come into the office, but we also will deal with small homeowners. And then there's the quality of life issues. People will come in and they will say there's a pothole on this street. And we have one staff member in particular whose function is to call the city agencies and to report quality of life issues. We've had a lot of success in terms of getting garbage picked up where it's down on a particular street, getting traffic lights or stop signs where people request it. So there's a lot of local individual issues that we serve when people come into our community office. The other part of the job is in Albany. And in Albany, I have to attend the sessions there. We vote on laws that are being proposed. And we, at this point, what's been happening in the last several weeks, and hopefully we'll come up with a budget in the end of April, in the end of March. March 31st is the deadline for getting a new budget. So we vote on the budget and we vote on laws. With the budget and the laws, it has to be passed by both the Assembly and the State Senate. And then, once the two of them have passed it, it has to be signed by the governor. So right now, the Assembly has its own budget proposal. The State Senate has its budget proposal. And they're now negotiating to see if they can reach a agreed-upon budget, which is also has to be agreed upon by the governor, Governor Hochul. And we're dealing with those issues, and the budget includes almost everything. It includes monies for our schools, education. It includes monies for the public and the non-public schools. It includes money for health care and mental health care. It includes monies for the environment. It includes monies for housing, which is being proposed by the governor in order to create more, we call it affordable housing. It means housing which has lower rent than you would normally have. And senior citizens, it could be senior housing, it could be housing for people with lower incomes. It could be all kinds of lower subsidized housing. And the governor proposes it, and then the Assembly and the Senate have to react to that, respond to it, and then finally it has to be agreed upon with the three parties. And if that happens, then we have a budget, and the state starts implementing the budget and putting out the monies to whoever it is, whatever agency it is, to supervise, to oversee those programs. So right now we're in the budget phase of Albany.
How would you describe the communication process with Albany when you deal with these issues?
Very honestly, I don't like the kind of communication that goes on. The problem is that sometimes you are not presented with the bills you're voting on until the last minute, which makes it difficult to know what you're voting on. So a lot of my work in Albany has to be doing a lot of reading. When I find out something is on the calendar, I got to read it and make sure that it's something that I can support. I do not believe in supporting bills simply because they're supported by the Democrats or by the Republicans. I believe you have to look at the bill and you have to determine how does it affect the people in the state and also the people in your district. We have an obligation to represent the people in the district and the people in the state. And if we don't do that, then we're not doing our job. So I am very, very, careful about reading what the bills say and to make sure that if I'm going to vote yes, it's going to be because I believe the bill is good for the people in the state. Now, we have many different areas in the budget in particular, right? That's what we're dealing with right now. So, for example, the governor has proposed a budget for education, which has $3.1 billion, a very high amount, increase in education. Now, I support that because what that does is it makes up for decades where the state budget was shortchanging the children in New York City. And for years it has been going through the courts. The courts decided, yes, the formula that's used is unfair to the children in New York City and other high-needs districts. So, but nobody until now was able to make up that difference. Governor Hochul did come up with a proposal to, within 3 installments, within 3 years, completely pay back the monies that were shortchanged for the children of New York City and other high-needs districts. So the education budget is one thing that we work on. There's also a higher education budget. A lot of our constituents have grandchildren or children who want to go to SUNY, the city university system, or the state university system. That's another area that for many years the state has not provided sufficient funding, in my opinion. Now, there's an attempt this year to provide more funding for CUNY and SUNY. There was also a proposal by the governor that would increase the tuition, make the students pay a little bit more tuition. Now, it's not a lot of money, but it may be the difference between some families being able to afford to encourage their children to go to college and not being able to. So in the Assembly budget proposal, we eliminated the tuition that the governor was providing, that was requiring of students, and instead we put monies for the operation of the SUNY and CUNY, money for Kingsborough, for example, monies for, there's a hospital located in Brooklyn, Downstate Hospital. It's a state university hospital. It's a teaching hospital, and for years that has been underfunded. We tried to provide more money to make sure that that hospital is well funded. And other teaching hospitals, there's one also upstate New York. But, and particularly the one in Brooklyn, we is an important part of our health system. It was a COVID hospital for the last few years, was converted to handle COVID cases, and now that COVID is ending, we need to make sure we get funding so that it will be a hospital that could service all kinds of health problems here, especially in the area of Brooklyn. So that's in the health budget. The housing budget, the governor has proposed building 800,000 new housing units in 10 years. Now, she's put monies in the budget, but there's a real dispute as to what is going to be the incentive to create all that new housing. In the past, we had a tax incentive so that when someone bought one of the newly built houses or condominiums, they would receive a tax break that would last over 10 years, 20 years. Different kinds of programs existed. This year, the governor has not included that in her budget. she has made some alternatives to provide an incentive. And the debate right now is whether or not we should go back to the old system, which provided tax incentives, or whether we should go to the new system, which would provide other kind of subsidies to developers, to builders, in order to be able to encourage them to build 800,000 new units. And she's also asked that a certain percentage of those units have to be affordable to people. One of the serious problems here, and we constantly find this with constituents every day, they cannot afford the rents. And the rents are so high that they're on a fixed income. They get maybe Social Security, maybe they get SSI, and they can't afford to pay the rents that are out there. And so they will very often come to us. There's some subsidized housing, like senior housing. In my district, the Subotnick houses on 78th Street are senior housing. There's another set of senior housing on Cropsey Avenue, Regina Pacis. But in this district, those are the only two senior developments. Well, there's one more. There's Sons of Italy, which is also on Cropsey Avenue. So there's three. But there's so many hundreds of thousands of people, seniors, tens of thousands of seniors, hundreds of thousands of people in the district, families that are having trouble paying the rent. And so we need affordable housing. The housing, however, has got to be affordable in that the subsidy is given to the building or to the tenant. Now, one of the ways that this was done in the past was a federal program called Section 8. Section 8 housing is no longer really available. The list was frozen years ago. They stopped accepting new applications, but supposedly they were going to use the applications that had been filed up until that time, and they were going to find a way eventually to start offering people Section 8 vouchers. That really has not happened in a satisfactory way. It really is something that, has been handled very poorly by both state and city government. And the federal government, the problem actually existed when apparently the city gave out a lot more vouchers than the federal government was willing to offer them. They overspent on the vouchers, and the federal government was going to discontinue those vouchers, and people would end up being evicted. But instead, they worked out a compromise where the program would be frozen, that the federal government would, in fact, advance some more money to the city, but that the city could not issue any more vouchers. And that's where we are at right now. COVID presented a big problem because many tenants owe a huge amount of money. There was a special rental assistance program so that the landlords could get their money, but there were more tenants who still owed money than there was money available. So right now, a lot of tenants owe a lot of money, and you cannot allow that money to go unpaid because the landlords need it in order to be able to maintain the buildings, to maintain repairs in the buildings, to do service to the buildings, and to actually renovate some of the older units that really are getting worn down, and you're getting roofs that are beginning to leak. So one of the challenges is to find ways to make sure that those monies will get paid to the owner, and that money will become available to maintain the existing housing, all at the same time when we're trying to create new housing. So that's a challenge that's being debated and discussed right now, and hopefully by March 31st, next Friday, we will reach an agreement. If we don't reach an agreement, then we have a big problem. Then the state government, in effect, could shut down until an agreement is reached, and that would be something that would be disastrous for everybody. So we don't want to see that happen.
Thank you. And I want to say, can you tell about what next week we can do in Albany? Do you know something next week?
Next week, we're going to be basically having negotiations on the budget. I have been appointed, committees are set up in each area that the budget covers. I have been appointed as a member of the Joint Budget Conference Committee for Higher Education. And the Assembly has a very good proposal on higher education. It's providing a lot more money for CUNY and SUNY. It's eliminating the tuition that the governor had proposed, and it's also raising the eligibility for the tuition assistance program. It was limited to families who make up to $75,000, $80,000. Now it's going to be increased to $100,000 under the proposal that has now been made for this year's budget. Now again, in order for that to take effect, it has to be agreed by the Senate and by the governor. And so next week, that's what my committee will be doing, negotiating between the Senate and the governor as to what monies, what budget agreement will be reached for the area of higher education. And that includes, monies for Kingsborough. It includes monies for the city colleges that exist in both, Brooklyn College and Manhattan colleges and Queens and so forth. It includes monies for the state university system, and it includes monies for how we deal with those students who do not have either the skills that they should have, they're weak in certain areas, or other kinds of needs in terms of assistance in getting textbooks and lab fees. And, how do we deal with that? How do we fund those programs to help those students? So next week, negotiations are going to continue, and hopefully by Friday, there will be an agreement reached in that area and the other areas of the budget, and then hopefully we will be able to vote on a budget agreement on Friday, and then the governor will also sign it. If all goes well, that's what will happen. If all doesn't go well, then we're going to have to continue negotiating so that the state will have a budget, because it would be unthinkable to have no budget for this coming year. We don't have the monies to support the unemployment office, the Department of Motor Vehicles. Those offices could start closing down if we don't reach some kind of an agreement before, if we don't reach an agreement by March 31st.
We have a lot of friends who, like my kids, my grandkids, my friends' kids go to colleges, go to schools. And we took a lot of interview from people, and they don't know enough about American Constitution. They know about some stuff about critical race theory, something like this, but they don't know the staples. They know this basis of America is Constitution. What maybe State Assembly can do for improve this situation?
I think we got to get more information out. And I've always believed that grassroots movements can make differences in how government functions. So I believe that we, need to get information to people, but then they have to respond. And if the budget is not, reached, then I think we have to start asking people to sign petitions. We have to ask people to write letters to their assembly members and their senators and to the governor. And we have to begin to demand and let people know what the needs are in this neighborhood. So, for example, every day in the past 3 months, groups have come up to Albany to meet with their legislators. And when they meet, they present what are their concerns, what are the problems that they face, and what do they want the legislators to do in order to correct those problems. That's how government works. And one of the things that I think is important in terms of making people more aware is by translating the information into various languages. So, for example, information should be translated into the Russian language, into Ukrainian, into Georgian, so that we can reach the people who are out there. Now, many of the younger people have learned English, and hopefully that's good, and, they will be able to, understand it in English. But a lot of seniors have not learned English, and a lot of seniors need help in getting that information. So government needs to translate its various information into the languages that people in areas like Bensonhurst and Gravesend and Dyker Heights and Bath Beach are comfortable with. And I've had many bills passed to try to make sure that that happens. Voting, for example, needs to be translated. The ballot needs to be translated into language like Russian. And the Board of Elections, sadly, has resisted doing that. And we've made improvement. They now have language translations into Russian for much on their website, and I was the one who introduced that bill. But we're still, not getting the ballot itself and the machines, which are capable of being translating into Russian. They're not being used to do that. And that's something that's sad and that we have to keep fighting to make sure happens. The whole thing is getting information to the people and then having the people communicate with their elected officials. I get letters. I try to answer all those letters. We have here in my office, as I said, staff who speak Ukrainian, Russian, Georgian, who are able to speak to the constituents in the language that many of these seniors are comfortable in. And so we try to do that on the local level, but it also should be done in terms of what is happening in Albany. There should be translations into Russian. And that, I think, would make people a lot more aware of what's happening in Albany, both the good and the bad, and to have their voices heard on what they think is good and what they feel is needed for the neighborhoods and for the families of the state.
And one more question, because we have now in Russian-speaking community, we have immigrants from Russia who one of them was ex senator of Russia, and he brought information that September 11 was the Bin Laden attack on United States was with help of Russian government. He brought some documents here. Can we make, because I personally went to police department that refused to take this information because this guy right now he's Los Angeles, but he ready to go to United States, to New York, because it's 3,000 people was died in New York, and he ready to bring all this information to police or special, or maybe what can we do in this case, because because it's like we live in New York and it's our friends, our relatives was died, and if we have such information, should we to make some investigation about this? What can we do?
I think probably the proper course would be to try to get the federal government, FBI, even CIA, but that's kind of, they're a mystery group that nobody knows how to reach them.
He went to Washington. He spoke to Washington. Washington did nothing.
Yeah, this is a problem that's sad. He should probably try to get the information out to the public. And then hopefully there will be a public call to start having the proper authorities take it seriously and investigate it. Government only works when people are involved in it. If certain information, you have a feeling that maybe government doesn't want it to get out. They don't want to deal with it for all kinds of reasons. Maybe because there's a question of national security and they're afraid that it'll cause bad relations between two different governments. But, it comes down to something that affects the lives of people needs to be discussed. There needs to be transparency in discussing it. And it needs to, be dealt with to make sure it doesn't happen again. One of the things that is going on right now is the war in Ukraine. And we see the effect of that very dramatically because there are many Ukrainian families who are coming into this neighborhood. And as I said, we do have a caseworker who speaks Ukrainian. Many of them also do speak Russian and Ukrainian. So, the Russian caseworkers also can speak with them and communicate with them. But we need to, make sure that their needs are also met because the federal government has arranged for them to come. There are many local social organizations, like, for example, the Jewish Community House of Bensonhurst, that are trying to provide services. And they, have come here basically with children, and they don't really have very much. They were given $100 basically to come here. And that isn't going to last very long, as I think everyone understands. So they're going to need to get information out about, what these families need, and then we have to try to provide resources for them. In this neighborhood, for example, there is a Ukrainian school on Saturdays which is located in another school that had closed down. They have space, so they rent out classrooms on Saturdays to a new wave Ukrainian group, and they actually, help develop and foster and reinforce the culture of Ukraine. So these children who have been coming from Ukraine, they're used to certain traditions and certain food and certain, holidays, and now they're into a country which doesn't have those, and they feel very lost. So this is one way, a group, a not-for-profit group, has actually said we're going to set up classes on Saturdays, and we're going to devote it to enriching and developing the traditions and the holidays that these children had, grown up and been raised with. And, it's a private group, it's a non-profit, but they're providing a service. And government needs to, assist them in every way possible, because if you hide things, if you turn your head and pretend it doesn't exist, you're not serving the people. So in terms of 9/11, a terrible tragedy, a national tragedy, a tragedy for New York, government does need to listen to information that someone may have. Now maybe it'll turn out the information is not correct, fine, but if it is correct, government has an obligation to direct attention to it, to respond to it, and to make sure that we use it so that that kind of a tragedy will not reoccur.